Welcome back to Stone Creek Farm. The world outside can wait. Tonight the snow falls in silence, thick and heavy and endless, blanketing everything beyond these walls in deep winter white. You can hear it, just barely, that soft whisper of 1,000 flakes settling against the roof, against the windows, against the bare branches of the trees that stand like sentinels around the farm. The wind moves through Deep Pine Ridge in the distance, a low and rolling sound that speaks of the wildness beyond, and yet here, in this moment, you are held safely away from all of that. The storm can rage as much as it wishes. You are somewhere else entirely. You stand at the door of the workshop, your hand resting on the cold iron latch, and you take a moment to simply breathe. Take a deep breath now, filling your lungs slowly with the cold night air, and then release it, watching your breath form a small cloud of white mist that disappears into the darkness. The farmhouse glows behind you, amber, light spilling from every window, warm and inviting, and you know that Miller is there, sprawled on the rug by the fireplace, his massive grey and white body rising and falling in the deep rhythm of sleep. Fig will be curled on the velvet armchair, tucked into the smallest possible ball of orange warmth, his green eyes closed in contentment. But you are not going there, not yet. Tonight, your hands want something to do. Your mind needs the particular kind of rest that comes from simple, repetitive work. There is something calling you to this space, to the workshop, to the work of sharpening and honing and bringing dull edges back to brightness. And so you are here at the workshop door, ready to step into that other kind of warmth, the warmth that comes from purpose and the gentle hum of a space heater and the knowledge that you have all the time in the world to do exactly what you need to do. You lift the latch, feeling the cold metal against your palm, and the door swings inward. With a low creak, the hinges stiff from the cold and the damp. Inside, the darkness waits, but it is not an empty darkness. It is not a threatening darkness. It is the kind of darkness that holds things, that wraps around tools and benches and shelves, and keeps them safe through the night, keeps them ready for the moment when they will be needed again. You reach for the switch, your fingers finding it by memory rather than sight, and the single bulb hanging from the center beam flickers to life, casting a warm and slightly amber glow across the space. The light is not harsh. It does not glare or blind. It is the color of old honey, soft and forgiving, and it makes every surface seem to glow with a gentle invitation. The workshop is a small building separate from the main barn, tucked close to the side of the farmhouse, where it can share a wall and steal a little warmth through the stones. The walls are rough-hewn timber, dark with age, and the smoke of 100 winters, and the floor is packed earth covered in a layer of sawdust that has been trampled smooth over time, creating a surface that is firm but yielding, that catches and holds the warmth in a way that bare earth never could. The ceiling is low, just high enough that you can stand upright without feeling cramped, and the single beam that runs down the center is thick and solid, marked with the scratches and dents of decades of use, scarred by the passage of time and the work of many hands. There is nowhere else you need to be. The world beyond this door has faded away, has become irrelevant, and all that matters now is this small space, this single moment, this gentle turning inward toward work and focus, and the quiet satisfaction of hands engaged in purposeful motion. You step inside, your boots making soft sounds against the sawdust floor, and the door swings closed behind you, shutting out the night and the snow and the wind. The latch clicks into place with a sound that feels final, that feels like a promise. You are here now. The world has narrowed to this single room, this single purpose, and everything else can fade away into the background like the distant hum of the storm. The cold air from outside has followed you in, clinging to your clothes and your skin, and you can feel it now, the chill that makes your fingers stiff and your breath visible in the amber light. But that will not last. You move toward the corner where the space heater sits, a squat and sturdy thing of dented metal and glowing coils, a reliable presence that has warmed this space through countless winter nights. You crouch down beside it, feeling the creak in your knees, and you turn the dial with cold fingers, hearing the click as the mechanism engages. For a moment, nothing happens, and then there is a soft humming sound, a vibration that you can feel through the metal casing, and the coils inside begin to glow, shifting from dull grey to faint red to bright orange. The transformation is slow and gradual, like a sunrise happening inside this small metal box, and you watch it with a kind of fascination, your hands held out toward the warmth that is beginning to radiate outward. The heat is gentle at first, barely noticeable, but it grows stronger with each passing second, pushing back against the cold that fills the workshop, creating a small sphere of warmth that expands outward from the heater like ripples spreading across water. You hold your hands closer to the glowing coils, feeling the stiffness in your fingers begin to ease, feeling the blood flow return to your fingertips. The warmth washes over your palms and your wrists and your forearms, seeping through the thick wool of your sweater and into your skin, and you close your eyes for a moment, simply absorbing it, simply being grateful for this simple and profound comfort. Heat, warmth, the antidote to winter, the thing that makes survival possible in this season of cold and darkness. After a long moment, you straighten slowly, feeling your muscles resist the movement after being crouched for so long, and you let your gaze wander around the workshop, taking in the familiar shapes and shadows. There is a workbench along the far wall, its surface scarred and stained with decades of labor, the wood darkened by oil and water and the passage of countless hands. Above it, a pegboard holds an array of tools, each one hanging in its proper place, silhouettes against the rough timber wall, hammers and saws and planes and chisels, all waiting in the quiet darkness for the moment when they will be needed again. To your left, a row of shelves holds jars of nails and screws, old coffee cans filled with bolts and washers, coils of wire and rope and leather strapping. Everything has a place, everything belongs. The organization is not perfect, not pristine, but it is the organization of a space that is used, that is lived in, and there is something deeply comforting about that. And there in the center of the room is the reason you are here tonight, the sharpening station. It is a simple setup, almost primitive in its design, but it has served the farm well for as long as anyone can remember. A thick wooden workbench, lower than the main bench, sits solidly on the floor, its legs wide and stable, planted firmly in the packed earth and sawdust. The wood is old, so old that it has turned nearly black in places, and the surface is worn smooth from years of hands resting on it, arms leaning against it, tools being placed upon it. On top of the bench, secured with heavy iron brackets that have been bolted through the wood and into the structure beneath, is the whetstone. It is a large stone, rectangular and grey, its surface worn smooth in the center from years and years of use, from blade after blade after blade being drawn across it in that same eternal motion. The edges of the stone are still rough, showing the original texture of the rock, but the center has been polished by friction into something that is almost glassy, that catches the amber light and holds it. Beside the whetstone sits a shallow wooden tray, handmade from scrap lumber, its bottom darkened and slightly warped from constant exposure to water. The tray is filled with water now, the liquid dark and still in the dim light, reflecting the ceiling beams above like a small and perfect mirror. A leather strop hangs from a hook on the side of the bench, the leather thick and supple, darkened by years of use and the oil from countless hands. And beside all of this, laid out in a careful row along the edge of the bench, are the tools that need attention. Axes and knives and chisels, each one dulled by months of work, each one waiting patiently to be brought back to sharpness and purpose and readiness. You move toward the bench now, your steps slow and measured, and you feel something in your chest begin to settle, some tight and wound up thing beginning to loosen its grip. This is the work you have chosen for tonight. This is the rhythm you will surrender to. This is the meditation that will carry you from the busyness of the day into the quiet peace of the night. You pull the stool out from under the bench and lower yourself onto it, feeling the worn wood press against your legs through your thick wool trousers. The stool is old, older than you can guess, and it has been shaped by decades of use into something that fits your body perfectly. The seat hollowed just slightly in the center, where countless others have sat before you, where the wood has been compressed and smoothed by the weight of bodies settling into work. You shift your weight, finding the balance point, and you let your shoulders drop, releasing tension you did not even know you were carrying, letting it drain away into the earth beneath you. The space heater hums behind you, a constant and steady presence, its warmth beginning to fill the workshop more completely now, pushing into the corners and the spaces between the rafters, driving back the cold, that has settled into the walls and the floor during the long winter day. The cold has not been banished entirely, not yet, but it has been pushed back, held at bay, and the contrast between the two makes the warmth feel all the more precious, all the more worth savoring. You breathe in slowly, drawing the air deep into your lungs, tasting it, analyzing it, understanding it. There is the smell of sawdust, that sweet and slightly vanilla scent of wood fibers cut and dried. There is the smell of old timber, darker and more complex, the smell of years soaking into grain. There is the faint metallic tang of iron and steel, sharp and clean. And beneath all of that, something harder to name, the smell of time itself, of history, of all the work that has been done in this space and all the work that will be done. You reach forward and place your hands on the edge of the workbench, feeling the rough grain of the wood beneath your palms. The surface is cool to the touch, not cold but not warm either, and you can feel every dent and scratch and gouge that has been carved into it over the years. There are deep grooves where saws have bitten in accidentally. There are dark stains where oil has soaked into the wood and been absorbed. There are lighter patches where the surface has been sanded smooth after some repair. Your fingers trace a long groove near the center, following its path across the width of the bench, and you wonder what tool made it, what moment of work or accident left this particular mark behind. A chisel that slipped, an axe that was set down too hard, a mistake made decades ago that has become part of the character of this bench, part of its story. It does not matter what made the mark is here now, part of the history of this place, and your hands rest on it as they have rested on 1,000 other surfaces, as they will rest on 1,000 more. There is comfort in this continuity, in this sense of being part of something larger than yourself, part of a long line of people who have sat on this stool and placed their hands on this bench and done this work. The whetstone sits before you, grey and patient, its surface reflecting the amber light in a way that makes it seem almost luminous, almost alive. You reach out and run your fingers across it, feeling the fine grain of the stone, the smoothness that has been worn into it by decades of friction, by decades of steel meeting rock and being transformed by the meeting. The stone is cool beneath your fingertips, cooler than the wood, and there is something deeply satisfying about that coolness, about the way it grounds you in this moment, makes you aware of your body and your senses and the physical reality of this space. There is a slight dip in the very center of the stone, a shallow valley where the surface has been worn away by blade after blade after blade, where the cumulative effect of 10,000 sharpenings has carved a depression into the rock itself. Your fingers find this hollow naturally, as though drawn to it, and you let them rest there, feeling the perfect smoothness of the stone in this spot, the way it has been polished by friction into something that is almost glassy. This is where the work happens. This is where dull becomes sharp. This is the heart of the process. Beside the stone, the wooden tray of water sits waiting, its surface still and dark and perfectly level. The water catches the light from above and holds it, creating a mirror that reflects the rough timber beams of the ceiling, the hanging bulb, your own face looking down at yourself from another world. You dip your fingers into the water, breaking the surface, and the cold is sharp and immediate, a shock that travels up your arm and makes you draw in a small breath. But it is not an unpleasant sensation. It is clarifying, it is grounding, it is a reminder that you are here, that you are present, that you are alive and awake and engaged in this moment. You lift your hand and watch the water drip from your fingertips, each drop falling back into the tray and creating a small ripple that spreads across the surface, expanding outward in perfect circles until they meet the wooden edges and disappear. The ripples overlap and intersect, creating complex patterns that shift and change and vanish almost as soon as they appear. You watch this for a long moment, mesmerized by the simple physics of it, by the way such a small disturbance can propagate across an entire surface. And then you dry your hand on your trousers, feeling the rough texture of the wool, the way the fabric absorbs the moisture and leaves your skin slightly chilled. You turn your attention now to the tools laid out beside the bench, and you take your time examining each one, assessing the work that needs to be done. There are 3 axes, their handles worn smooth from years of gripping, the wood darkened by the oil and sweat of countless hands. The blades are dulled, their edges rounded and nicked, marked by months of splitting wood and clearing brush and doing all the hard work that axes do on a farm. There are 8 knives of various sizes, from a small paring knife with a blade no longer than your thumb to a large kitchen knife with a blade that runs the length of your hand and beyond. Some are for food preparation, some are for general utility. All of them need sharpening, and there are chisels, 6 of them, narrow and precise, their beveled edges nicked and rounded from carving and shaping and cutting through stubborn grain. These are the tools that require the most care, the most precision, because a chisel must be sharp enough to slice through wood fibers cleanly, but it must also be precisely angled, the bevel ground to an exact degree, or it will not cut properly, will tear and splinter rather than shaving away smooth curls of wood. Each tool tells a story. Each one carries the memory of the work it has done, the hands that have held it, the purposes it has served. The large kitchen knife, its blade marked with tiny scratches, speaks of 1,000 meals prepared, 1,000 vegetables chopped, 1,000 moments of nourishment created. The splitting axe, its handle worn nearly white in the center, where hands have gripped it, speaks of cords of wood split and stacked, of fires kept burning through long winter nights. The smallest chisel, its blade barely wider than a pencil, speaks of delicate work, of careful shaping, of details refined and perfected. And tonight you will bring each one back to sharpness, back to readiness, so that when the spring comes and the work of the farm begins again in earnest, when the ground thaws and the seeds need planting, and the fences need mending, and the animals need tending. These tools will be ready to serve once more. They will be sharp, they will be true, they will be capable of the work they were made to do. You reach for the first tool, one of the smaller axes, and you lift it from the bench, feeling its weight settle into your palm. The handle is smooth and warm from being inside the workshop, from absorbing the heat that the space heater has been pushing into the room, and it fits your hand as though it was made specifically for you. The head of the axe is heavy, the steel dark and marked with tiny pits and scratches, and the pale orange blush of surface rust beginning to form. When you turn it toward the light, tilting it so that the blade catches the amber glow, you can see that the edge has been rolled in places, the blade no longer sharp, but rounded and blunt, incapable of cutting cleanly. It needs work, it needs care, it needs your attention and your time and your skill. And you have all of those things in abundance. You set the axe down gently on the bench beside the whetstone, positioning it carefully so that it will be easy to reach when you are ready. And then you turn your attention to the water tray once more. You dip your hand in again, cupping your palm and lifting a small amount of water, feeling the weight of it, the cold of it, and you pour it slowly over the surface of the whetstone, watching as it spreads and soaks into the porous grey surface. The stone darkens where the water touches it, turning from pale grey to deep charcoal, and you can see the texture of the grain become more visible, tiny pits and valleys that will grip the steel and do the work of sharpening, that will tear away the dull metal and reveal the sharp edge beneath. You add more water, pouring it slowly and evenly, watching it flow across the stone and pool in the shallow depression in the center. And you continue until the entire surface is wet and glistening in the light, until the stone looks almost black, almost like polished obsidian. This is how it should be. The water is essential to the process, lubricating the contact between steel and stone, washing away the metal particles that are ground off, preventing the blade from overheating from the friction. Behind you, the space heater continues its steady hum, and you can feel the warmth on your back now, seeping through your heavy wool sweater and into your skin, relaxing the muscles of your shoulders and your spine. The workshop is beginning to feel less like a cold outbuilding and more like a small sanctuary, a place carved out of the winter night where warmth and purpose and quiet focus can exist together. The contrast between the cold outside and the warmth inside has become more pronounced, and you are deeply aware of how fortunate you are to be here, in this space, with this work to do, with nowhere else you need to be. And then, from somewhere near the door, you hear a familiar sound, a low huff of breath, the soft scrape of claws against the wooden threshold, and then the heavy thump of a large body settling onto the floor. You turn your head slowly, not wanting to break the spell of this moment, and there is Miller. He has followed you from the farmhouse as you somehow knew he would, The big old English sheepdog moves with the careful deliberation of age, his massive grey and white body lowering itself onto the sawdust floor with a grunt of satisfaction. His shaggy coat is dusted with snow, tiny flakes clinging to the long fur around his neck and shoulders, melting slowly in the warmth of the workshop, and as he settles, he shakes himself once, a full body shake that starts at his nose and travels all the way to his tail, sending a small shower of white crystals and water droplets into the air. They catch the light and sparkle for a moment like tiny stars before melting into nothing. Miller looks at you with dark eyes half hidden beneath his long forelock, and his tail thumps once against the floor, a slow and heavy sound that speaks of contentment, of belonging, of being exactly where he wants to be. He has chosen his spot carefully, as dogs do, close enough to the space heater to feel its warmth, but not so close that he will become uncomfortable, not so close that the heat will be too much for his thick coat, his large paws crossing at the ankles, and then he lowers his massive head onto them with a long, satisfied sigh. His eyes close slowly, the lids drooping, and within moments you can hear the soft, steady rhythm of his breathing, deep and even and peaceful. The breathing of a dog who is safe and warm and at rest. You smile, a small and quiet smile, and turn back to the workbench. Miller is here, and that means everything is as it should be. The storm can howl outside. The snow can fall as thick as it wants. The wind can rage through Deep Pine Ridge and across the frozen fields. None of that matters here. Here, in this small workshop, with the space heater humming and the whetstone waiting and Miller sleeping by the door, you have everything you need. You have warmth, you have purpose, you have companionship, you have safety. You pick up the small axe again, cradling it in your hands, and you prepare to begin the work. There is no hurry, there is no deadline, there is only this moment, this tool, this stone, and all the time in the world to do what needs to be done. You hold the axe in both hands now, turning it slowly in the amber light, studying the blade from every angle with the focused attention that this work requires. The steel is dark, almost black in places where rust has begun to form tiny spots along the edge, small pockets of oxidation that speak of moisture and time. When you run your thumb carefully along the blade, not pressing but just barely touching, you can feel how dull it has become. The edge rounded and lifeless, no longer capable of the sharp bite that defines a properly maintained tool. This axe has worked hard. It has split kindling and cleared brush and trimmed branches and done 100 small tasks around the farm, and now it is tired. Now it needs to be restored. You shift your grip on the handle, adjusting the position of your hands until you find what feels right, and then you lower yourself more firmly onto the stool, settling your weight, preparing yourself for the work ahead. You hold the axe by the handle with your right hand, while your left hand supports the head, cradling the weight of the steel, and you lower the blade toward the whetstone, moving slowly and deliberately. The angle matters. You have done this enough times to know that the angle is everything, that the blade must meet the stone at just the right degree, or the work will be wasted, the edge ground away into nothing, or left thick and clumsy and incapable of cutting. Too steep and you will create a fragile edge that chips easily. Too shallow and you will create a thick edge that does not bite. You adjust your hands, tilting the axe head just slightly, feeling for the correct position more than seeing it, relying on the muscle memory that has been built up over years of sharpening tools. You rock the blade gently, feeling how it sits against the stone, and when you find that perfect angle, that sweet spot where the entire bevel of the blade is sitting flush against the grey surface, you know it. You can feel it in your hands, in your wrists, in the way the steel wants to sit against the stone. This is right, this is ready. And then you begin to move. You push the blade forward, sliding it across the whetstone in a smooth and steady motion, and immediately you hear the sound. It is a low, gritty scraping, the sound of steel meeting stone, the sound of metal being worn away particle by particle, molecule by molecule. The sound fills the workshop, cutting through the hum of the space heater and the distant whisper of the snow against the roof. And it is a good sound, a satisfying sound, a sound that speaks of work being done and purpose being fulfilled. It is the sound that craftspeople have been listening to for thousands of years, since the first human picked up a stone and used it to sharpen the first blade. You pull the blade back, lifting it slightly so that it does not catch on the return stroke, and then you push forward again, repeating the motion, establishing the rhythm that will carry you through this work. Steel on stone, forward and back, forward and back. Your hands find a natural pace, a steady and mechanical rhythm that requires no conscious thought, no deliberate effort. Your arms move, your shoulders shift, your body sways slightly with each stroke, and the blade glides across the whetstone again and again and again, wearing away the dull metal, revealing the sharp edge that lies beneath. The water on the stone begins to change almost immediately. Where it was clear and dark when you first poured it, it now begins to turn grey as tiny particles of steel mix with it, floating in suspension, creating a slurry that is both lubricant and abrasive. You can see it forming, spreading across the surface of the stone with each stroke. And this is good, this is part of the process. The slurry helps the blade move more smoothly across the stone, reduces the friction, and the metal particles in it act as an additional abrasive, helping to refine the edge. You push forward and the blade cuts through this slurry, leaving a clean trail behind it, and when you pull back, the slurry flows back into place like water filling a wake, ready for the next stroke. The pattern repeats over and over, and you fall into it completely, your mind emptying of everything except this motion, this sound, this moment. You count the strokes in your head at first, not because you need to, but because the counting is part of the rhythm, part of the meditation of this work. 1, 2, 3, The numbers march forward in time with your hands. 4, 5, 6. Each stroke is the same as the last, each one wearing away another microscopic layer of steel, bringing the blade incrementally closer to sharpness. 7, 8, 9. The counting becomes automatic, requires no thought, and you can feel your breathing falling into sync with the motion, inhaling as you pull back, exhaling as you push forward, and the two rhythms, the rhythm of your breath and the rhythm of your hands, merge together and become one. 10 strokes, 20, 30. The numbers continue to climb, but they begin to lose their meaning, becoming just another element of the rhythm rather than something that requires tracking or attention. Your body has taken over the process now, your muscles remembering what to do, your hands knowing exactly how much pressure to apply, how fast to move, how to maintain that perfect angle that keeps the blade cutting efficiently into the stone. The space heater hums behind you, a constant presence, a steady note that underlies everything. Miller sighs in his sleep, a long and contented sound that makes you smile even though you do not break the rhythm of your work. The snow continues to fall outside, silent and endless, building up on the roof and the windowsills and the branches of the trees, but that world has faded away, has become distant and irrelevant. There is only this workshop, only this stone, only this blade. After 50 strokes you pause. The pause feels almost jarring after the steady motion, and for a moment your hands do not quite know what to do without the weight of the blade pushing across the stone. You lift the axe carefully, turning it toward the light to examine your progress, and you can see that the edge has begun to change. Where before it was rounded and dull and lifeless, now there is a thin line of brightness appearing along the very edge, a silver line that catches the amber light and reflects it back. This is the new edge forming, the fresh metal being revealed as the dull exterior is worn away. But it is not sharp yet, not nearly sharp enough. You can see tiny scratches running perpendicular to the edge, places where individual particles of stone have gouged too deeply, and you know that you need to continue, need to refine the edge further before moving to the next stage of the process. You lower the blade back to the whetstone, taking a moment to adjust your grip, to ensure that your hands are positioned correctly and that the angle remains consistent, and you begin again, forward and back, steel on stone. The scraping resumes, steady and hypnotic, and you let yourself sink deeper into the rhythm, deeper into the meditation. There is no urgency here. There is no rush, no deadline, no pressure. The work will take as long as it takes, and you have all the time in the world to do it right. The slurry on the whetstone has thickened now, becoming more paste than liquid, grey and viscous, and you can feel the resistance increasing slightly, the blade requiring just a little more effort to push through the thicker medium. This is good. This is part of the process. The thicker slurry means that more steel is being removed, that the sharpening is progressing more quickly, and you lean into the motion, slightly using your body weight to add pressure, and the blade bites deeper into the stone with each stroke, the sound becoming louder, more pronounced. You continue for another 50 strokes, maybe more, losing count somewhere around 40, but not caring, not needing to know the exact number. The work itself is what matters, not the counting, and you can feel in your hands when enough is enough, can sense when the blade has reached the right stage. Your fingers know what they are doing even when your mind has wandered away into that pleasant, empty space that comes with repetitive work. When you pause again, lifting the axe to examine it once more, you can see that the silver line has grown brighter, more defined, running along the entire length of the edge now. The blade is beginning to look sharp, beginning to look like a tool that could cut rather than just batter its way through wood. But there are still those tiny scratches, still those fine lines running along the edge that speak of the coarseness of the stone, and you know that more work is needed. You reach for the water tray, dipping your hand in and feeling that sharp cold once more, and you cup a small amount of water, lifting it carefully so as not to spill, and you pour it over the whetstone. The grey slurry washes away, flowing off the edges of the stone and dripping onto the workbench, leaving dark trails on the old wood. You pour more water, refreshing the entire surface, washing away the accumulated metal particles and revealing the clean grey stone beneath. The stone looks almost new again after being washed, the texture visible, the worn depression in the center clearly defined. You set down the water tray and return the axe blade to the stone, finding the angle again, feeling for that perfect position, and you continue the work. The sound changes slightly with the fresh water, becoming cleaner, less gritty, more of a smooth hissing than a harsh scraping. The blade moves more easily now, gliding across the wet stone with less resistance, and you adjust your pressure accordingly, using lighter strokes, more finesse. This is the refining stage, where the rough work has been done, and now it is a matter of smoothing and perfecting. Forward and back, forward and back. The rhythm resumes, perhaps a little faster than before, the strokes a little lighter, and you can feel the difference in the way the blade responds, the way it wants to move across the stone. You watch as the new slurry begins to form, grey and thin this time, spreading across the stone with each stroke, but not building up the way it did before. The colour is lighter too, more silver than grey, and this tells you that you are removing less material now, refining rather than grinding, approaching the final stages of this first side of the blade. Your shoulders are warm now from the work and from the space heater, and you can feel a light sheen of sweat forming on your forehead, despite the cold that still lingers in the corners of the workshop. The physical effort is cumulative, building up stroke by stroke, and even though each individual motion is small and requires little force, the repetition adds up, engages your muscles, creates that pleasant warmth that comes from sustained work. It is not an uncomfortable heat, it is the heat of effort, of muscles working in steady repetition, of a body doing what it was made to do. And it feels good, feels right, feels like exactly what you need in this moment. You lose yourself completely in the work now. The counting has stopped entirely, replaced by a kind of thoughtless focus, a state where your mind is both completely engaged and completely empty at the same time. You are aware of everything: the sound of the blade on the stone, the warmth of the space heater on your back, the weight of the axe in your hands, the rhythm of your breathing, the distant presence of Miller sleeping by the door. And yet you are thinking of nothing, focused only on this moment, this motion, this single task. It is a meditative state, a kind of moving meditation, and there is something deeply peaceful about it, something that allows all the tension and worry of the day to drain away and be replaced by this simple, focused calm. Time becomes fluid. You might have been working for 10 minutes. You might have been working for 30. The passage of time has lost its meaning, has been replaced by the passage of strokes, by the steady transformation of the blade from dull to sharp. The only clock that matters is the clock of the work itself, and that clock measures time in the brightness of the edge, in the smoothness of the steel, in the way the blade catches and reflects the light. After what might be many minutes or might be much longer, you lift the axe again and examine the edge with fresh eyes. The silver line has grown much brighter now, more defined, and when you turn the blade at just the right angle to the light, you can see that the edge is becoming thin, truly thin, approaching real sharpness. The tiny scratches are still visible if you look closely, fine lines running along the edge like the grain in wood, but they are much smaller now, much less pronounced, and you know that you are nearly finished with this side of the blade. But nearly finished is not the same as finished, and you do not rush. You return the blade to the stone and continue, making another 20 strokes, 30, until you are satisfied that this side has received all the attention it needs. Only then do you stop, only then do you lift the axe and flip it over, rotating it so that the other side of the blade is now facing down, ready to receive the same careful attention that you have just given to the first side. The angle must be matched exactly. This is critical. If one side of the blade is ground at a different angle than the other, the edge will be uneven, asymmetric, and it will not cut properly. One side will do all the work while the other side does nothing, and the blade will want to twist and turn in the cut rather than moving straight and true. So you take your time, adjusting your hands, feeling for that perfect position where the bevel sits flush against the stone. And when you find it, when your hands tell you that the angle is right, you begin again, forward and back, steel on stone. The scraping resumes, filling the workshop with that familiar, comforting sound, and you fall back into the rhythm as easily as breathing, as easily as your heart beating. This is what your body knows how to do now. This is what your hands understand. And you give yourself over to it completely, trusting the process, trusting your muscle memory, trusting that the work will proceed as it should. This side of the blade requires fewer strokes. You can feel it in the way the steel moves across the stone, in the lighter resistance, in the cleaner sound. The first side always takes longer because it is establishing the rhythm, finding the angle, getting your body into the motion. The second side benefits from all of that preparation, and the work goes more quickly, more smoothly. You count to 30, then to 60, and the blade transforms beneath your hands, the dull metal being worn away to reveal that same bright silver line that you created on the first side. When you lift the axe to examine both sides together, holding it up to the light and rotating it slowly to see the edge from every angle, you are satisfied with what you see. The edge is bright all the way around, a thin silver line running the entire length of the blade on both sides, meeting at a sharp angle in the center. When you test it carefully with your thumb, not pressing but just barely touching, moving your thumb perpendicular to the edge so as not to cut yourself, you can feel the sharpness beginning to emerge. The edge has that particular quality that sharp edges have, that feeling of thinness, of precision, of something that could easily separate one thing from another. But you are not finished. The whetstone has done its work, has ground away the dull metal and created a new edge, has established the geometry that will allow this axe to cut. But that edge is still rough, still marked with tiny scratches from the stone, still bearing the texture of the abrasive that created it. To bring it to true sharpness, to make it an edge that will cut cleanly and hold its sharpness through months of use, to refine it to the point where it can slice rather than just chop, you need to move to the next stage. You need the strop. You set the axe down gently on the workbench, placing it in a position where you can easily reach it again, and you reach for the leather strop hanging from the hook on the side of the bench. The strop is a long strip of thick leather, firm but with enough give to conform slightly to the blade, attached to a wooden handle at one end that allows you to hold it securely. The surface of the leather is smooth and dark, burnished from years and years of use, from blade after blade being drawn across it, and when you run your fingers across it, you can feel the suppleness of the material, the way it has been softened and conditioned by the oil from countless hands and the compound that has been rubbed into it. You hold the strop in your left hand, gripping the wooden handle firmly, your fingers wrapping around it in a way that has become automatic through repetition, and you pull it taut, using your arm and your shoulder to create tension, pulling until the leather forms a straight and level surface that is rigid enough to work on but still has some give, some flexibility. The tension must be right, too loose, and the blade will just deform the leather without being sharpened. Too tight and the leather will be as hard as wood and will not do its job. With your right hand you pick up the axe, gripping it near the head so that you have good control, and you position the blade against the leather, this time with the edge facing away from the direction of the stroke. This is the critical difference between the stone and the strop, the thing that separates grinding from polishing. On the stone, you push the blade edge first, cutting into the surface, using the abrasiveness of the stone to wear away metal. On the strop, you pull the blade's spine first, moving the edge away from the direction of travel, so that you are polishing the edge without cutting into the leather. The motion is almost backwards, counterintuitive, but it is the right motion, the motion that refines and perfects. You draw the blade across the leather in a smooth, sweeping motion, starting at the heel of the blade near the handle and moving toward the toe at the far end, and the sound is completely different from the stone. Where the stone scraped and hissed and made that harsh grinding noise, the leather whispers a soft shushing sound that is barely audible over the hum of the space heater, a gentle sound that speaks of refinement and precision rather than brute removal of material. You can feel the resistance, gentle but present, as the microscopic structure of the leather catches the tiny imperfections on the edge of the blade, the scratches left by the stone, and smooths them away, polishes them, transforms the rough edge into something that is truly sharp. You flip the axe in your hand, rotating it so that the other side of the blade is now against the leather, and you draw it across again, maintaining the same smooth motion, the same gentle pressure, the same angle. Forward on one side, flip, forward on the other side. The rhythm is different from the whetstone, slower and more deliberate, each stroke taking longer, requiring more care, more attention to the angle and the pressure. But it is no less meditative, no less absorbing. Your focus narrows even further, if that is possible, until there is nothing in your awareness except the feeling of the steel against the leather, the sound of the blade moving across the surface, the subtle changes in resistance as the edge becomes smoother and smoother with each pass. 10 strokes on each side. You count them carefully this time, because with the strop the number matters. You need to ensure that each side receives equal treatment. 20 strokes total, 30. The motion is soothing, almost hypnotic, and you can feel your breathing slowing even further, becoming deep and regular, matching the slow sweep of the blade across the leather. Your shoulders relax, your jaw unclenches, and that deep sense of peace that comes with focused, purposeful work settles even more completely into your bones. 40 strokes, 50. You continue until you can no longer feel any catching, any rough spots, until the blade glides across the leather as smoothly as a skate across ice, with no resistance except the gentle friction of steel on leather. The sound becomes even quieter, even softer, until it is barely there at all, just a whisper of movement, and then you stop and you lift the axe one final time, and you test the edge to see what you have created. You hold a small piece of scrap paper, a torn corner of an old feed sack that has been sitting on a shelf in the workshop for longer than you can remember, its edges yellowed with age. You bring the edge of the blade to it, holding the paper loosely in one hand and the axe in the other, and you do not press. You do not saw. You do not force the blade through. You simply let the weight of the blade rest against the paper, barely touching it, and you draw it down in a slow, controlled motion. The paper parts silently, effortlessly, falling into two pieces that flutter down to the sawdust floor like leaves falling from a tree. There is no resistance, no tearing, no ragged edge, just a clean, perfect separation, as though the paper wanted to divide itself and the blade simply showed it how. The edge is sharp, the edge is true, the axe is ready. You set the axe aside, placing it carefully on a clean section of the workbench, away from the water and the slurry, and you look at it for a moment, this tool that you have restored. There is satisfaction in this, deep and quiet satisfaction that does not need to be expressed in words or celebrated with any fanfare. The work speaks for itself. The sharp edge speaks for itself, and you feel that small sense of completion, that gentle pleasure that comes from doing a job well and knowing that it is done. But there are more tools waiting, many more. The second axe sits beside the first, larger and heavier, and beyond that the third axe, and beyond that the 8 knives, and beyond that the 6 chisels. Each one needs the same attention, the same care, the same patient work. And the night is long, and you have nowhere else to be, and you are ready to continue. You reach for the second axe, this one with a wider blade and a heavier head, a splitting maul designed for breaking apart logs and dealing with the heaviest work on the farm. You lift it, feeling the weight of it settle into your hands, substantial and solid, and you turn it toward the light to examine the edge. This one is in worse condition than the first. The blade is not just dulled but actually damaged, with several nicks visible along the edge, small gouges where the axe has struck stone or metal or hit a knot in the wood with too much force. These nicks will need to be ground away completely before the edge can be properly sharpened, and that means more time at the whetstone, more strokes, more patience. You do not mind. You have all the time in the world. You have this night and this workshop and this work, and that is enough. That is more than enough. You lower the blade to the whetstone, refreshing the water first so that the surface is clean and wet, and you find the angle, positioning the deepest nick directly against the stone. You will work on the damaged sections first, focusing your effort where it is most needed, grinding away the damaged metal until the edge is continuous once more. And then you will sharpen the entire length of the blade, bringing it to the same keen edge that you created on the first axe. Steel on stone, forward and back, the scraping resumes, loud and gritty, because you are removing a lot of material, really digging into the blade to get past the damage, and you settle into the rhythm once more. The motion is automatic now, second nature, and your body simply does what it knows how to do while your mind rests in that calm, empty space that has opened up. You work on the first nick, grinding it away stroke by stroke, watching as the deep gouge in the edge slowly becomes shallower, smaller, less pronounced. It takes many strokes, perhaps 100 or more, but you do not rush, do not try to speed the process. You simply continue, steady and patient, and eventually the nick disappears entirely, ground away into nothing, and the edge is smooth once more in that spot. You move to the second nick, positioning it against the stone, and you repeat the process. Steel on stone, forward and back. The rhythm is unchanging, the motion is constant, and you lose yourself in it completely. Time passes, the slurry thickens, and you refresh the water. The blade transforms gradually, almost imperceptibly, but with each stroke it is a little bit closer to sharp, a little bit closer to ready. Miller shifts in his sleep, rolling from one side to the other, and the movement catches your attention for a moment. You glance over at him, this big old dog who has followed you out into the workshop, who has chosen to spend this evening here with you rather than staying by the warm fire in the farmhouse. His eyes are closed, his breathing deep and even, and there is something profoundly comforting about his presence, about knowing that he is there, that you are not alone in this small space. He is companionship without demand. He is presence without intrusion, and you are grateful for him. You return your attention to the axe, to the blade in your hands, and you continue the work. The second nick disappears, and then the third. When all the damage has been ground away and the edge is continuous once more, you switch to long, even strokes, sharpening the entire length of the blade with the same careful attention you gave to the first axe. You work one side and then the other, matching the angle precisely, ensuring that the edge is even and symmetrical. And when the whetstone has done its work, when both sides of the blade show that bright silver line that indicates a properly sharpened edge, you reach for the strop once more and begin the process of polishing. The leather whispers against the steel. Your hands move in those same smooth, practiced arcs, pulling the blade across the strop again and again. And slowly, gradually, the blade transforms from merely sharp to truly keen, developing an edge that will cut cleanly and hold its sharpness through countless hours of work. When the second axe is finished, you set it beside the first, and you take a moment to appreciate the two of them sitting there together, both now sharp and ready, both gleaming in the amber light. And then you reach for the third axe, the largest of the three, and you begin again. The third axe takes longer than the others because it is bigger, because there is more steel to work with, more surface area to sharpen. But the process is the same. Find the angle, begin the motion, let the rhythm carry you forward, steel on stone, water and slurry, the sound of metal being shaped and refined. Your hands know what to do, your body knows how to move, and you surrender to the work completely, letting it fill your awareness, letting it be the only thing that exists. The space heater hums, Miller breathes. The snow continues to fall, heavier now, the wind picking up slightly so that you can hear it moaning softly around the corners of the workshop, a low sound that speaks of the storm's power but cannot penetrate the warmth and safety of this space. Here, Inside you are protected, you are held, and the work continues, steady and endless and deeply satisfying. When the 3 axes are finally finished, all of them sharp and clean and ready, lined up in a neat row on the workbench with their blades gleaming in the light, you feel that you have accomplished something significant. 3 tools restored, 3 edges brought back to life, and you are ready now to move on to the next stage, to the tools that require even more precision, even more care. You turn your attention to the knives. There are 8 of them, arranged in order from smallest to largest. The tiny paring knife at one end, its blade barely longer than your thumb, curved and delicate. A small utility knife next to it, then a chef's knife, long and straight and beautifully balanced. A carving knife with a narrow blade, a bread knife with its distinctive serrated edge, a butcher's knife, heavy and thick, a boning knife, thin and flexible, and finally, at the end of the row, a large kitchen knife, nearly as long as the chef's knife but heavier, more robust, designed for the hard work of breaking down large cuts of meat and chopping through bones. Each knife is different. Each one requires a slightly different approach, a slightly different angle, a slightly different amount of pressure. But the fundamental process is the same. Stone first, then strop. Grind away the dull metal, reveal the sharp edge, polish it to perfection. You begin with the paring knife, picking it up carefully, holding it in one hand. The knife is so small that you can hold the entire thing in your palm, and you need to adjust your technique accordingly. You cannot grip it the way you grip the axes. Instead, you hold the handle lightly, using just your fingertips, giving yourself the control and finesse that this smaller blade requires. You lower the blade to the whetstone, finding the angle, and you begin to sharpen. The strokes are much smaller now, more delicate, and the sound is higher pitched, almost a hissing rather than a scraping. You work carefully, attentively, making sure that the tiny blade receives the same quality of attention that you gave to the much larger axes. Size does not matter. Every tool deserves to be properly sharp, properly maintained, properly cared for. The paring knife takes less time simply because there is less blade to sharpen, and soon you are moving to the strop, polishing the tiny edge, bringing it to a brightness that catches the light and throws it back. When you test the sharpness by slicing through a piece of paper, the blade cuts so cleanly that you barely feel any resistance at all. Perfect. You set the paring knife aside and pick up the utility knife. The process repeats. Whetstone, strop, test. The utility knife transforms under your hands, changing from dull to sharp, and you set it beside the paring knife and move on to the next. The chef's knife takes longer because the blade is longer, requiring more strokes to sharpen the entire edge. You work patiently, methodically, making sure that every part of the blade receives attention, from the heel near the handle all the way to the tip. The motion of sharpening a long blade is slightly different from sharpening a short one. You need to move the blade as well as moving your hands, sliding it across the stone so that every part of the edge makes contact, so that the sharpening is even from end to end. You rock the blade slightly as you move it, following the curve of the edge, maintaining consistent contact with the stone, forward and back, side to side. The motion becomes a kind of dance, your hands and the blade moving together in coordination, and you fall into the rhythm of it, into the particular flow that this tool requires. The chef's knife is one of the most important tools in the kitchen, used daily for 100 different tasks, and it deserves special attention. You take your time, making sure the edge is perfect, making sure the bevel is even, making sure that when you are done, this knife will be able to slice through a tomato without crushing it, will be able to mince herbs with precision, will be able to do all the delicate work that a sharp knife makes possible. When you move to the strop, you can feel the quality of the edge improving with each pass, becoming smoother and sharper, approaching that perfect keenness that separates a good knife from a great knife. And when you finally test it, slicing through paper and then through a piece of wood shaving, the blade performs beautifully, cutting with ease, moving through the material as though it were not there at all. You continue through the row of knives, working from one to the next, giving each one the attention it needs. The carving knife with its long, narrow blade, the bread knife, which requires a completely different technique because of its serrated edge. For the bread knife, you cannot use the whetstone in the normal way. Instead, you use a small triangular file, working each individual serration, sharpening the beveled side of each tooth while being careful not to touch the flat side. It is tedious work, requiring patience and a steady hand, but it is necessary, and you do it carefully, tooth by tooth, until the entire edge has been refreshed. The butcher's knife is heavy and thick, designed for chopping through tough material, and it requires a steeper angle than the other knives, creating a more robust edge that can withstand heavy impacts without chipping. You adjust your hands accordingly, changing the angle, and you work the blade across the stone with firm strokes, grinding away more metal than you would with a finer knife, creating that sturdy, durable edge that this tool needs. The boning knife is the opposite, thin and flexible, designed for delicate work, for following the contours of bones and separating meat from cartilage. It needs a much shallower angle, creating a fine, keen edge that can slice through tissue with minimal resistance. You work carefully, using light pressure, taking your time to create an edge that is sharp enough to be useful, but not so fragile that it will roll or chip with normal use. And finally, the large kitchen knife, the workhorse of the collection, used for everything from chopping vegetables to breaking down chickens. This knife has seen hard use, and the edge shows it, but you bring it back to life with patient work on the stone and the strop, and when you are finished, it gleams in the amber light, ready for whatever tasks await it. You set the last knife beside the others, completing the row, and you sit back on the stool for a moment, rolling your shoulders, feeling the pleasant ache in your muscles. Your hands are tired now, your fingers slightly stiff from gripping tools for so long, but it is a good tiredness, the kind that speaks of work well done. You flex your fingers, stretching them out and then curling them into loose fists, working the stiffness out, and you can feel the blood flowing back into the joints, warming them, restoring their flexibility. The space heater continues its steady hum, and the workshop is thoroughly warm now, the cold completely driven back into the corners and the spaces behind the shelves. The air itself feels different, feels softer somehow. And when you breathe in, the warmth fills your lungs and spreads through your chest. You close your eyes for just a moment, simply breathing, simply being present in this space, and you feel deeply, profoundly content. But there is still work to do. The chisels remain, 6 of them, waiting in their row at the end of the workbench. These are the tools that will require the most care, the most precision, the most patience. A chisel is not like an axe or a knife. An axe can be slightly off and still function. A knife with an imperfect edge will still cut. But a chisel must be perfect. The angle must be exact. The edge must be straight and true. The bevel must be flat and consistent, or the tool will not work properly, will not produce clean cuts, will tear and splinter instead of slicing through wood fibers like silk. You take a moment to prepare yourself for this final stage of the work. You dip your hands in the water tray, letting the cold shock you awake, bringing back your focus, and then you dry them thoroughly on your trousers. You refresh the water on the whetstone, pouring slowly until the surface is clean and glistening. You adjust your position on the stool, settling your weight more firmly, making sure you are stable and balanced, and then you reach for the first chisel. It is a narrow one, the blade no wider than your pinky finger, designed for fine detail work, for cutting grooves and channels and creating precise joinery. You hold it up to the light, examining the edge carefully, and you can see immediately that this chisel needs significant work. The edge is not just dull but actually damaged, rolled over on one side, and the bevel shows signs of uneven wear, one corner ground away more than the other. This happens when a chisel is used without proper care, when someone presses too hard on one side or holds it at an inconsistent angle. The damage is fixable, but it will require patient work to re-establish the proper geometry. You lower the chisel to the whetstone, positioning it so that the entire bevel is in contact with the stone. This is critical with chisels. The bevel must be flat against the stone, the entire surface making contact, or you will create a rounded edge instead of a flat one, and a rounded edge will not cut properly. You rock the chisel gently, feeling for the position where the entire bevel sits flush, and when you find it, you begin to grind. The motion is similar to sharpening the axes and knives, forward and back, but the pressure is different, more focused, more concentrated on the small area of the bevel. You can feel the chisel wanting to rock, wanting to shift out of the perfect angle, and you hold it steady with both hands, your fingers gripping it firmly, keeping the pressure even across the entire bevel, ensuring that the grinding is uniform, steel on stone, forward and back. The sound is higher pitched than it was with the larger tools, almost a singing quality, and you can see the bevel changing with each stroke, the dull, uneven surface being worn away to reveal bright metal beneath. The work is slow because you are being so careful, because you cannot afford to make a mistake, cannot afford to grind away too much metal on one side or the other. You make 10 strokes and then lift the chisel to examine it, checking the bevel, assessing your progress. The unevenness is being corrected slowly but surely, and you return the chisel to the stone and continue. 20 strokes, 30, 40. You count carefully now because with chisels the counting matters more than it did. With the axes, you need to track your progress, need to ensure that you are removing metal evenly, need to check frequently to make sure you are maintaining the correct angle. After every 10 strokes, you pause and examine the bevel, looking at it from different angles in the light, running your finger across the surface to feel for flatness. The work requires intense concentration, much more than the axes or knives required. There is no letting your mind wander, no drifting into that empty, meditative space. Instead, you must stay present, must stay focused, must pay attention to every detail. But there is still a rhythm to it, still a pattern, and you find yourself settling into it, finding that place where concentration and calm exist together, where your mind is fully engaged but not stressed, where you are working hard but not struggling. Miller shifts again in his sleep, making a soft sound, something between a sigh and a groan, and the sound makes you smile. Even in his sleep, he is communicating, letting you know that he is there, that he is comfortable, that all is well. You glance over at him, this loyal companion, and you feel a wave of affection wash over you. Dogs are so simple in their needs, so pure in their devotion. They ask for so little and give so much. And Miller, old as he is, still chooses to be near you, still follows you from place to place, still wants to be part of whatever you are doing. You return your attention to the chisel, making another 10 strokes, another 20, and finally you see that the bevel has been restored to flatness, the uneven wear ground away, the surface consistent from one edge to the other. The first stage is complete. Now you need to sharpen the edge itself, refining the cutting surface, bringing it to that keen sharpness that will allow it to slice through wood fibers cleanly. You adjust your grip slightly, focusing now on the very edge of the chisel rather than the entire bevel, and you make finer, more delicate strokes, working to create a sharp line where the two bevels meet. The slurry on the stone has darkened considerably, thick with metal particles, and you wash it away and refresh the water, giving yourself a clean surface to work on. The stone looks almost black when it is wet, the water soaking into the porous grey rock and transforming its appearance. You continue sharpening the edge, making stroke after stroke after stroke, watching as that familiar bright silver line begins to appear, growing more pronounced with each pass. The edge is taking shape, transforming from dull to sharp, from useless to capable. And when you have sharpened one side sufficiently, you flip the chisel over and begin working on the other side, taking care to match the angle precisely, ensuring that the edge will be symmetric and true. The second side goes more quickly because you have already established the rhythm, already found the right angle, and your hands know what to do. Forward and back, steel on stone. The bright line appears on this side as well, growing brighter with each stroke, and when you hold the chisel up to the light to examine both sides together, you can see that the edge is approaching sharpness, approaching that point where it will be ready for the strop. But before you move to the strop, you do something that you do not do with axes or knives. You take a few more strokes on the stone, but this time you hold the chisel flat, the back of the blade against the stone rather than the bevel, and you make several quick passes to ensure that the back is perfectly flat. This is unique to chisels. The back must be flat, absolutely flat, or the chisel will not cut properly, will not be able to take shavings that are thin and consistent. You check the back by holding it up to the light and looking for any gaps, any spaces where light shows through between the steel and the stone, and when you are satisfied that it is flat, you move to the final stage. The strop for chisels is different from the strop for axes and knives. The motion is the same, pulling the blade spine first across the leather, but the pressure must be even lighter, the attention to angle even more precise. You hold the chisel carefully, maintaining that perfect bevel angle, and you draw it across the strop with smooth, controlled movements. The leather whispers, the edge polishes, and slowly, gradually, the chisel transforms from sharp to truly keen, developing an edge that is like a razor, an edge that can shave wood like butter. You make 20 strokes on the bevel side, and then you flip the chisel and make 10 strokes on the back, keeping it absolutely flat against the strop, polishing the back surface to a mirror finish. And when you are done, when you lift the chisel and examine it in the light, you can see that the edge is perfect, sharp and true, ready for whatever precise work it will be asked to do. You test it on a piece of scrap wood, a soft pine board, with straight grain, and you place the chisel against the surface and push gently. The blade bites in cleanly, slicing through the wood fibers without resistance, producing a thin curling shaving that rises up and falls away. The cut surface left behind is smooth and clean, no tear out, no roughness, just pure, clean wood. Perfect. The chisel is ready. You set it aside and reach for the second chisel, and then the third, giving each one the same meticulous attention. The process becomes almost ritualistic now, each chisel receiving its turn, each one being transformed from dull to sharp through the same patient progression. You work through them methodically, stone and strop, checking and rechecking, ensuring that each bevel is flat, each edge is true, each tool is brought to its full potential. The fourth chisel, the fifth. Your hands move with increasing confidence now, the muscle memory fully engaged, and you can feel when an edge is right without even needing to test it, can sense when the bevel is flat just by the way the steel moves across the stone. This is the knowledge that comes from practice, from repetition, from doing the same task over and over until it becomes part of you. The fifth chisel is the widest of the set, its blade as broad as 3 fingers, used for the heaviest work, for paring down thick timbers and cleaning up rough cuts. This chisel has taken more abuse than any of the others. The edge is badly damaged, rolled and nicked in several places, and the bevel is extremely uneven, worn away in the center where you press hardest during use and still thick at the edges. This will require significant work, significant time, significant patience. You settle yourself more firmly on the stool, taking a deep breath, preparing yourself for the long process ahead. You refresh the water on the stone once more, making sure the surface is clean and wet, and you lower the chisel to the stone and begin to grind. The damage is severe enough that you need to remove a lot of metal, grinding all the way back past the damaged area to reach good steel, and this takes many strokes, perhaps several hundred, your arms moving in that same repetitive motion over and over and over, steel on stone, forward and back. The sound fills the workshop, steady and constant, and you sink into the rhythm completely, letting it carry you forward. The slurry builds up quickly, turning dark grey, and you refresh the water every 50 strokes or so, keeping the stone clean, keeping the process efficient. Your shoulders burn with effort, your fingers are stiff from gripping the chisel so tightly, but you continue, steady and patient, because this is what the work requires. After what feels like a very long time, the damage has been ground away and the bevel is flat and even once more. You examine it carefully, checking from every angle, running your finger across the surface to feel for any remaining unevenness. And when you are satisfied, you begin the process of sharpening the edge itself, more strokes on the stone, refining the geometry, creating that sharp line where the bevels meet, and then the strop, polishing the edge to perfection, bringing it to that final keenness. When the fifth chisel is finished, you set it beside the others, and you look at the row of them, 5 sharp and ready, and 1 remaining. The last chisel is a medium-width one, not particularly special, but it has been used hard and needs attention. You pick it up and you begin the process one final time. Stone, strop, test. The rhythm is so deeply ingrained now that your hands barely need guidance from your mind. They know what to do. They understand the work. The space heater hums. Miller breathes deeply in his sleep. The snow continues to fall outside, building up on the roof and the windowsills, transforming the world beyond these walls into something white and soft and silent. But here, inside this small workshop, with the amber light glowing and the warmth surrounding you and the work nearly complete, you feel a deep and profound sense of satisfaction. You have spent this evening well. You have taken dull tools and made them sharp. You have prepared them for the work ahead. You have done something useful, something meaningful, something that matters. When the last chisel is finished and you set it down beside the others, completing the row, you sit back on the stool and simply breathe for a moment. All the tools are sharp now. All of them are clean and ready. 3 axes, 8 knives, 6 chisels, 17 tools in total, each one restored, each one brought back to its full potential. The workbench is covered with them, arranged in neat rows, their blades gleaming in the amber light, catching the glow and reflecting it back. You stand slowly, feeling the stiffness in your legs from sitting for so long, feeling the deep tiredness that has settled into your muscles from hours of focused work. You stretch, reaching your arms above your head, feeling your spine lengthen and release, feeling vertebrae pop softly as they realign. Your shoulders ache pleasantly. Your hands are tired but satisfied. Your whole body feels the good weariness that comes from sustained effort, from hours of purposeful labor. You move around the workbench slowly, gathering the tools one by one, and you carry them to the pegboard on the wall, hanging each one in its proper place. The axes go on their hooks, handles down, blades protected by leather guards. The knives go into their slots, arranged by size. The chisels go into their rack, lined up in order from narrow to wide. Everything has a place, everything belongs. As you hang the last tool, the final chisel, finding its spot in the wooden rack, you pause for a moment with your hand still resting on it. You look at the pegboard, at all these tools now sharp and ready, and you feel something shift inside you. Not just satisfaction, though that is there, something deeper, a sense of completion, a sense of having honored these tools, having given them what they needed, having maintained the continuity of use and care that stretches back through generations of work on this farm. Your hand drops to your side and you turn back to survey the workshop. The workbench is clear now except for the whetstone and the water tray and the strop. The space feels different somehow, feels lighter, as though the work you have done has changed something in the very atmosphere of the room. The amber light seems softer, warmer, more welcoming than before. You move to the water tray and carefully pour the grey water into a bucket kept for this purpose, watching as the metal particles swirl and settle. You wipe down the whetstone with a clean cloth, removing the last traces of slurry, revealing the grey surface beneath. You hang the strop back on its hook, the leather swaying slightly with the motion. These small acts of cleaning and putting away feel important, feel like the proper conclusion to the work, the final notes in a long composition. And then, with everything tended to, everything in its place, you turn off the space heater. You reach down and turn the dial until it clicks and the hum stops and the orange glow of the coils begins to fade. The sudden silence is almost startling after hours of that constant background noise, and for a moment you simply stand there, listening to the quiet that rushes in to fill the space. The workshop settles around you. The wood creaks softly. The wind whispers against the walls. Miller's breathing continues, steady and deep. The warmth from the heater lingers in the air, will linger for some time yet, and you know that you are not quite ready to leave this space, not quite ready to step back out into the cold and make your way to the farmhouse. There is something here, something in this moment that you want to hold on to for just a little longer. Your eyes find the old armchair in the corner, and your body moves toward it almost of its own accord. The armchair sits in the corner of the workshop, threadbare and sagging, but deeply welcoming, positioned where it can absorb warmth from the space heater during long winter evenings. The upholstery is worn nearly through in places, the original pattern faded to almost nothing, but the springs still have life in them, still provide support, and the cushions have been molded by years of use into a shape that seems designed specifically for rest. You lower yourself into it, and immediately the chair embraces you, the cushions yielding beneath your weight, the back supporting your spine, the armrests cradling your elbows. You sink into it with a long, slow exhale, feeling the tiredness that has been building in your muscles all evening seem to intensify now that the work is done, now that you have given yourself permission to rest. Your legs feel heavy, your arms feel heavy, even your eyelids feel heavy, and you have to make an effort to keep them open as you settle deeper into the chair. The workshop is still warm from the space heater, the air holding the heat even though the coils have stopped glowing, and you can feel that warmth all around you, wrapping you like a blanket, seeping through your clothes and into your skin. You let your head fall back against the high back of the chair, staring up at the rough timber beams of the ceiling, at the cobwebs in the corners that sway gently in air currents you cannot feel, at the single bulb still glowing with that soft amber light. You close your eyes for a moment, just breathing, and you can feel your heartbeat beginning to slow, can feel your body beginning to shift from the engaged alertness of work into the softer, quieter state of rest. The transition is gradual, gentle, like a boat drifting from current into still water, and you let it happen without resistance, without trying to hold on to the energy that carried you through the sharpening. When you open your eyes again, you find that Miller has woken. The big old English sheepdog has lifted his massive head and is looking at you with those dark, soulful eyes, his expression soft and content. You can see in his face that he is pleased that you are still here, pleased that you have not left him alone in the workshop, pleased that you are settling into rest rather than rushing off to the next task. His tail thumps once against the sawdust floor, a slow and heavy beat that makes you smile. "Come here, old friend," you murmur, your voice quiet in the stillness, and you pat your hand against the arm of the chair. Miller needs no further invitation. He pushes himself up onto his feet with a low grunt of effort, his joints stiff from lying in one position for so long, and he shakes himself again, that full body shake that ripples from his nose to his tail, sending a few loose hairs floating through the amber light. And then he pads across the workshop toward you, his paws making soft thuds against the packed earth, his movements slow and deliberate and utterly without hurry. He reaches your chair and immediately lowers his massive head, pushing his cold nose against your hand where it rests on the arm. The shock of that cold, wet nose against your warm skin makes you laugh softly, a quiet sound that seems too loud in the silence of the workshop, and you lift your hand and place it on his head, feeling the soft fur beneath your palm, the solid weight of his skull. Miller leans into your touch, pressing his head more firmly against your hand, asking wordlessly for more affection, and you give it to him freely, stroking his head, scratching behind his ears, running your fingers through the long, shaggy fur of his neck. His coat is thick and soft, still slightly damp in places from the snow that clung to him when he first came in, but mostly dry now, warm by the space heater and by his own body heat. You can feel the warmth of him radiating outward, and you dig your fingers deeper into his fur, finding the skin beneath, feeling the life and the vitality that still pulses through this old dog despite his age. His tail wags slowly, brushing against the side of the chair with a soft swishing sound, and he makes a low sound of contentment, something between a sigh and a groan that comes from deep in his chest. You continue to pet him, your hand moving from his head down along his neck and shoulders, feeling the powerful muscles beneath the fur, the solid structure of bone and sinew that gives him his strength. Miller is old now, well past his prime, his muzzle grey and his movements slower than they once were, but he is still strong, still capable, still the guardian and protector that he has always been, and there is something deeply comforting about his presence, about the weight of him leaning against your chair, about the warmth of him filling the space between you. He is more than a pet. He is a companion, a friend, a living reminder of home and safety and belonging. After a few moments, Miller seems satisfied with the attention he has received, and he turns away from the chair, circling once, twice, 3 times in that ancient canine ritual, looking for just the right position, and then he lowers himself onto the sawdust floor right beside your feet, settling with a heavy sigh that seems to come from his very soul. His body curls slightly so that his head is resting on his paws and his back is pressed against the legs of your chair. You can feel the weight of him against your boots, a solid and reassuring presence, and you reach down with one hand to rest it on his side, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing beneath your palm. The rhythm of his breathing is slow and deep and perfectly regular, the breathing of a creature who is completely at ease. who knows that he is safe and warm and cared for. You match your own breathing to his without conscious thought, your chest rising and falling in sync with his sides, and you feel your body relaxing even more deeply, sinking further into the chair, letting go of the last bits of tension that still cling to your shoulders and your neck. The workshop has become a cocoon, a small world complete unto itself, a pocket of warmth and peace carved out of the winter night. The space heater is off now, but the air is still warm, still soft, and you know that it will hold this warmth for a while longer, giving you time to rest before you need to venture back out into the cold. The amber light from the single bulb seems softer now, more diffuse, as though it too is settling into rest, and the shadows in the corners have lost their definition, have become vague and gentle, no longer edges but gradients, no longer boundaries but transitions. Your eyelids are beginning to feel very heavy now. The work has taken more out of you than you realized. The hours of repetitive motion, the constant focus, the steady engagement of muscles and mind. And now that the work is done and you are sitting in this comfortable chair with warmth all around you and Miller sleeping at your feet, the tiredness is catching up with you in a way that feels almost overwhelming. You can feel it in your limbs, that pleasant heaviness, that gentle pulling sensation that makes you want to close your eyes and simply rest, simply be, simply let go of wakefulness and drift into that softer space that lies between wake and sleep. You let your eyes drift closed, not sleeping yet, but not quite awake either, hovering in that liminal space where thoughts become loose and disconnected, where the boundaries of the world become vague and uncertain. You can still hear the sounds of the workshop, the soft creaking of the roof, the gentle settling of the walls, Miller's breathing, your own heartbeat, but they seem distant now, as though they are coming from very far away, as though you are listening to them through water or through fog. You think in that vague and dreamlike way about the tools you have sharpened. You see them in your mind's eye, hanging on the pegboard, their blades gleaming, ready for whatever work the farm will ask of them in the spring. You think about the axes splitting wood, about the knives slicing vegetables, about the chisels shaping timber. And there is satisfaction in these thoughts, satisfaction in knowing that you have prepared these tools, that you have done your part to keep the farm running, to maintain the continuity of work and purpose that defines this place. But even these thoughts are fading now, becoming softer and less distinct, and you feel yourself sinking deeper into the chair, deeper into that pleasant tiredness, deeper into the warmth and the quiet and the safety of this moment. There is nowhere else you need to be. There is nothing else that requires your attention. The work is done. The tools are sharp. The storm will pass. And here, in this moment, you are exactly where you are supposed to be. Your hand continues to rest on Miller's side, rising, falling with his breathing, and that rhythm has become your rhythm, slow and deep and even, and you feel yourself being pulled down by it, being drawn into that same deep rest that Miller has found, that peace that comes from knowing that all is well, that you are safe, that you can let go. The workshop seems to pulse gently around you, as though it too is breathing, as though it too is alive. The walls expand and contract. The light dims and brightens. The warmth ebbs and flows. Or perhaps it is just you, your consciousness beginning to fragment, beginning to lose its grip on the solid world and drift toward that other world, that world of dreams and darkness and deep restorative sleep. You could get up now. You could open your eyes and stand and walk to the door and step out into the snowy night and make your way back to the farmhouse. You could climb the stairs to your bedroom, could slip under the heavy quilts, could fall asleep in your own bed with Fig curled at your feet and the sound of the wind in the trees outside your window. You could do all of that, but you do not move. You stay where you are, sitting in this old chair with your hand resting on Miller's side, and you let the tiredness have you. Let it pull you down deeper into comfort and warmth and safety. The chair holds you. Miller's presence grounds you. The workshop protects you. And you surrender to all of it. Surrender to the night and the quiet and the deep, abiding peace that has settled over everything. Your breathing has slowed even further, each breath coming longer and deeper than the last, and you are aware in some distant part of your mind that you are falling asleep, that you are crossing that threshold from waking to sleeping, but you do not resist it. Do not try to pull yourself back. You let it happen. You welcome it. Because this is what your body needs, what your mind needs, and there is no reason to fight against it. This farm holds you safely. The thought rises up from somewhere deep inside you, not spoken but felt, a truth that settles into your bones and becomes part of your very structure. Safety surrounds you here. The storm outside cannot touch you. The cold cannot reach you. The darkness cannot find you. Here in this workshop, with the warmth still lingering in the air, and Miller breathing beside you, and the tools all sharp and resting on the pegboard, you are held in a perfect circle of peace and safety and belonging. Your breathing has become so slow that you can barely feel it anymore. Each breath a long and gentle wave that rises and falls and carries you deeper and deeper into stillness. You are aware of your body in the most distant way possible, aware of the weight of your limbs in the chair, of the warmth on your skin, of Miller's solid presence against your feet. But these sensations are far away now, as though they belong to someone else, as though you are floating somewhere just above yourself, looking down at this scene of perfect, quiet from a place of complete detachment. The snow continues to fall outside. You can sense it, even though you cannot see it, building up on the windowsills and the roof and the branches of the trees, transforming the world into something soft and hushed and dreamlike. The wind has gentled completely now, no longer moaning or pushing against the walls, but simply breathing, a slow exhale that moves through the forest and across the fields and around the buildings of the farm, with infinite patience. And inside, the workshop holds its warmth, holds its silence, holds you in a way that feels eternal, as though this moment could stretch on forever, and time itself would not mind, would simply wait for you to be ready to return to it. Stone Creek Farm keeps you safe. The words repeat, forming a gentle rhythm that matches your heartbeat, that matches your breathing, that matches the slow passage of time itself. Safe, safe, safe. And with each repetition, you feel yourself releasing something, some last thread of tension, some final whisper of resistance, until there is nothing left but pure, simple, complete surrender to this moment, to this place, to this deep and abiding peace. Miller shifts very slightly in his sleep, adjusting his position by some tiny increment, and even that small movement is gentle, is soft, is part of the overall quietness that fills the workshop. His breathing remains deep and even, a constant presence, a rhythm that underlies everything, an anchor that keeps you connected to this place even as you drift further and further away from the waking world. His warmth seeps through your boots and into your feet, and from there it spreads upward through your body, filling you with a heaviness that is not uncomfortable but deeply, profoundly restful. The kind of heaviness that comes just before sleep, when the body finally lets go of its hold on consciousness and allows itself to sink into that deeper rest. The amber light has dimmed now, or perhaps your perception has dimmed, your eyes seeing less and less as they close more and more completely. The workshop is still visible when you crack your eyes open for a moment, the familiar shapes and shadows, but they seem less solid now, less defined, as though they are images painted on mist rather than real objects occupying real space. You let your eyes close again, and the images fade away entirely, replaced by darkness, warm and soft and welcoming. The sounds of the workshop have faded too, or perhaps you have simply stopped hearing them in the normal way. Miller's breathing is still there, but it has become part of you, indistinguishable from your own breathing. The creaking of the roof is still there, but it has become the sound of the building itself breathing, expanding and contracting with the temperature, living its own slow life. And beneath all of that, there is silence, deep and profound silence, the kind of silence that exists at the bottom of the ocean or in the heart of a mountain, a silence that is not empty but full, pregnant with possibility and peace. Safety lives here at Stone Creek Farm. The farmhouse is there, across the yard. You know it without seeing it, its windows glowing with warm light that spills out onto the snow, but you do not need to go there right now. Fig is there, curled in the velvet armchair in front of the fire, a small ball of orange warmth, but he does not need you right now. The bed is there, upstairs, with its heavy quilts and soft pillows, but it can wait. Everything can wait. Because right now, in this moment, everything you need is here, in this chair, in this workshop, in this perfect stillness. Miller is here. The warmth is here. The peace is here, and you are here, held by all of it, surrounded by all of it, part of all of it. There is no separation anymore between you and this place, between you and this moment. You have dissolved into it, have become woven into the very fabric of the workshop, into the timber and the stone and the air itself. Your thoughts have become like snowflakes, individual and distinct for a moment, and then melting away into nothing, dissolving into the general softness that fills your mind. You think of the work you did tonight, of the blade sliding across the whetstone, of the sound of steel on stone, but the thought appears and then vanishes, leaving no trace behind. You think of tomorrow, of the morning light on the snow, of the farm waking to a transformed world. But that thought too disappears before it can fully form. Deep sleep is here. You can feel it now, not as something approaching from outside, but as something that has been here all along, that has been waiting patiently for you to notice it, to acknowledge it, to surrender to it. It is in the chair beneath you, cradling you. It is in the warmth around you, holding you. It is in Miller's steady breathing, anchoring you. It is in the darkness behind your eyelids, welcoming you. It is everywhere and everything, and all you have to do is stop resisting, stop holding yourself apart from it, and let it take you completely. Your hand on Miller's side has grown so heavy that you could not lift it if you wanted to. But that is perfectly all right, because you do not want to move, do not need to move, do not have any desire to do anything except remain exactly as you are, sinking deeper and deeper into this moment, into this rest, into this perfect peace. The space heater is silent. The snow falls silently. Miller breathes his silent breath, and you listen to all of it and to none of it, your consciousness fragmenting, dissolving, spreading out like mist until there is nothing left that could be called a coherent self, nothing left but this deep abiding presence that simply is, that simply exists, that simply rests in the eternal now. Here on Stone Creek Farm, you are protected. The words are the last thing you are aware of before awareness itself dissolves, before the final boundary between waking and sleeping disappears entirely, before you slip beneath the surface of consciousness and into the deep, still waters of true sleep. And in that sleep there are no dreams, no images, no stories playing out behind your closed eyes. There is only darkness, warm and soft and infinite, and you float in it the way a leaf floats on water, carried by currents too subtle to perceive, moved by forces too gentle to resist, held by something larger than yourself that cradles you with infinite care. The storm outside will continue through the night, the snow falling and falling until everything is covered, until the world has been made new, soft and white and pristine. The sun will rise eventually over old greyback, painting the snow with shades of pink and gold, and the farm will wake to that transformed landscape. Everything familiar but changed, everything the same but different. But that is hours away, many hours away, and for now there is only this, the darkness, the warmth, the safety, the deep and dreamless sleep that holds you completely, that asks nothing of you, that simply allows you to be. Deep sleep is here. The workshop breathes around you, the old timbers settling, the walls embracing you, the space itself becoming a womb of safety and rest. Miller continues his steady breathing, his presence a constant even in your deepest sleep, a tether to the physical world that keeps you anchored even as you drift through the realms of unconsciousness. And the night stretches out before you, long and peaceful and full of the deepest rest that a body can know. You are home, safe and protected here. Complete peace surrounds you. The edges of consciousness have blurred completely now, dissolved into something that is not quite sleep and not quite wake, but something in between, something deeper than either, a state of pure rest, where even the concept of self has faded away, and there is only this vast, quiet presence that breathes and exists and simply is. This farm cradles you in safety, and you are held by this workshop, by this chair, by Miller's warmth, by the memory of the work you did with your hands, by the sharpness of the tools you restored, by the rhythm of steel on stone that still echoes faintly in your muscles and your bones. You are held by all of it, and you surrender to all of it, and you let it carry you down into the deepest rest, the most complete peace, the most profound safety. The snow falls, the night deepens, and you sleep, truly sleep, sleep in a way that renews and restores and makes whole again. When you wake, whenever that is, whether in an hour or in many hours, you will find yourself still here, still in this chair, still warm, still safe. And Miller will still be beside you, his breathing still steady, his presence still constant. And the tools will still be sharp, waiting on the pegboard for whatever work needs to be done. But that is then. This is now, and now there is only sleep, deep and dreamless and perfect, the kind of sleep that heals, that restores, that makes everything right again. You sink into it completely, letting it cover you like the snow covers the ground, like the darkness covers the world, like the peace covers everything. Stone Creek Farm holds you safely. Deep sleep is here. Good night.